Makes sense.
Hey.
Awesome.
We're up.
We up? All right, I'll do the intro and I'll do the spoiler warning again. All right, welcome to the weekly pull. I wanted to interrupt Joel, but I figured for the first time in like 20,000 years, I won't be rude to Joel in the opening.
Yeah.
Do wonders never cease?
Shut up, Joel.
Thank you, Rob. And that's exactly what I was going to do. I was setting up for him to talk. Thank you, Rob. Did the shut up, Joel.
You see, nature abhors a vacuum is the thing. Then he stopped, which means someone had to take his place.
Thank you so much for that resub. 24 months in a row. Black Mage 8-bit. Welcome to the weekly poll, everyone. This is the weekly show right here on the Eligible Monster Twitch channel every other Tuesday, where we come together and talk about some hot button news in the comic book world, or something that happened, or the movies, or whatever we feel like talking about. Matter of fact, we may or may not, we didn't even talk about this, but I just realized we might have to have an episode next week for Ant-Man. I don't know. We'll figure that out later.
Yeah.
I thought it was coming out. Somebody was like, yeah, I'm going to go see Ant-Man this weekend. I was like, oh, that's right.
Exactly. Dude, I did too. We revamped the entire schedule to put Ant-Man content
That's
in
how
there.
I feel.
Anyway,
Oops.
So I'm Benny the Comicstorian. You might know me from the channel Comicstorian. I don't know how the layout is for Sal there. Oh, above me is Rob from Comics Explained. To my left, or to the side of me, is Tiffany from Comic Pop, along with Sal in the very center from Comic Pop. And in the upper left-hand corner or right-hand corner, depending if this is reversed or not, that is Joel. And a very interesting painting in the background. Joel, could you please explain to us what the painting is?
Again, I'm staying in my aunt's house out here in Victoria. I have no clue. I think she painted it herself. You're not the first one to ask me what it is. I'm trying to take out like my art school knowledge there. Like, you know, red is reminiscent of passion. I think I got no clue. I got no friggin' clue.
Hey, it's a thing that exists.
It's a thing. Hey, in the comments section, tell us what you think this painting means to you.
Interpretive art.
All right, we're gonna do a quick catch up on some subs real fast before we had Dat Silly Killy, Hackerman's SWE, JKLL Taurus subscribed to Twitch Prime, and the man, the myth, the legend has resubscribed for 2 months in a row. Rob, you are backed up like 12 splooges, so can we just get like a giant splooge just to keep moving?
Oh, damn. Oh,
that was a special splooge.
that was very special.
Splooge. It's a coughing splooge.
That was amazing.
And a Rusted Turtle has joined the Eligible Monster Twitch family, joining us over here on Weekly Poll. And for those guys who are watching for the first time, this show is supported by the subscriptions that come in during the day the episode goes live and the day afterwards. We use those to pay Dana, who is the individual, or Danielle, I don't know what she actually goes by. I always call her Danielle. Danielle. Well, it's just Dana Chu. And it always throws me off.
But it's not, you know what it is? It's the way she spells it, but it's supposed to be like Dana Chu. Like,
yeah.
It's a thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
So Danamon is our individual who puts this up on the iTunes and the Googles and the YouTubes. So she's the one that handles all the behind the scenes for us. So that the funding goes to fund that, guys. That's what the Twitches during this period are. So anyway, I go by many names. Thank you, Danielle. Let's help the situation.
Yeah.
So today we are going to be discussing about a rather hot button topic that honestly I was not even offended by until I started seeing. Does anyone know what Alterna Comics are?
Nope.
Yes.
Okay. Alterna Comics is a new comic line. I've read a few of them. They're okay. I'm not going to be like, I'm not fully supporting the idea, but I've got to read more, in my opinion, to really understand if I like their brand or not. They're doing old school classic, like newsprint style. So it's like 99 cents a comic. You can get 4 of them for the price of like one DC book.
Yes.
They're not horrible.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a good idea and a good way to break into it. But the CEO of that company was tweeting about this, and that's what got me to see it. So what happened? Let me backpedal a little bit here. What happened, for those guys who don't know, is Batman 50 is going to be the wedding of Batman and Catwoman. The New York Times posted not even a synopsis, literally a word for word what pretty much happens in the entirety of the book, including the big spoiler at the ending on Monday. Now, before we go into this, do not spoil it in the chat. We're not going to be discussing the actual events of the comic today. Okay?
Yeah,
if
Van
you
Hammers
spoil
will
it,
be handed out.
Yes. If you spoil it, you get one quick warning, which is a timeout, and then banned. And I don't care if you're a sub or if you're a longtime viewer. If you're trying to screw over the hosts who are here, the hosts who do not know that spoiler are not watching the chat.
No.
So if you're trying to get them, you're just getting yourself banned. The ones who are watching the chat, which is why I'm thinking the subs, are me, because I've had it spoiled and I don't care. But we're not talking about it, okay?
Yep.
So anyway, what happened immediately following was a huge backlash on the front of DC. I'll explain the story, then we can discuss it, okay? Everyone is attacking DC for spoiling the thing with Batman. It also has 100 variants. It's also huge. But what I was unaware of is that now there is a following of individuals defending, so there's basically a bunch of people stating that they are no longer going to buy Batman 50, even though they pre-ordered up to 10 variants, as a way to get back at DC. So now local comic book stores are going to be stuck with all these variants, which then, this is when I kind of saw the argument. The Alterna Comics guy tweeted out, hey, if you're against Batman 50 being spoiled by DC, don't screw over your local comic book store. Go and buy something else with that pre-order. Get something. Don't completely screw them out of the money, which then led to, I looked into the chain of the discussion, which then led to people are saying they're not going to buy any more Batman books. They're they promoted the new Catwoman, and people are responding with, I am not touching that after what's happening in Batman. And they're not doing it because of the results of Batman 50. They're doing it as a way to get back at DC for spoiling Batman 50.
Some people are mad about the actual twist, but it's kind of the perfect storm of everyone being mad for different reasons.
Exactly.
No matter what.
It's kind of beautiful in its way that they screwed up on every single front with this. Some people are mad at the spoilers. Some people are mad at the twist. People who own stores are mad because they're either not going to get the money they wanted, order too many variants that are worthless now, and here's another funny one that Sal and I were talking about, have to open up on July 4th, one of the few actually recognized holidays, but they have to be open to sell Batman 50.
Yeah. Well, here's my question. Is DC responsible for it? Or was it like a Pentagon Papers thing where the New York Times just said the hell with it and published it?
Did you see what John Cunningham said? Director of sales?
No.
Oh, I pulled it up. Hang on.
Okay. Wow. Good
You
one,
ready?
Tiffany.
That was my first question as well, because I've yet to see a response in what I've found. But
All right, I'm going to read this to you. It's a little long, but here we go. DC sales strongly advocated getting the news out ahead of the OSD, so that the monument of realization did not occur hours before events began. We even did our level best to try and spoil it here on this page over and over again, and failed. The New York Times article was posted here at 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, not out of pride, please, but to get you the information as soon as we could. In the abstract, we believed the news would break on Monday morning, given the arrival time of physical copies in stores, and the reality that a copy or a scan would end up being passed to uncontrolled comic book outlets, much like Marvel's wedding issue last week, and every other major comic book event in the last decade. That part was in parentheses. I don't think he actually said that part. But everything before the much like. As mentioned here before, any discussion about financial remedies for problematic DC products must occur after the product is on sale. While the Times piece is more fulsome than some might like, it does not spoil the shock ending of the book for fans. We're working on getting this posted here for you.
So yes, they did.
This was part of their marketing plan.
Yeah, they're like, somebody's going to spoil it. Might as well be us.
Did the marketer at Marvel get fired and go work for DC?
Yeah, it was good.
In all honesty, I hearing that makes a lot of sense, because how many times has somebody released information on a big event way ahead? We don't
every time. That's true, but this is like spoiling the death of Superman and the fact that he's going to come back before it happens.
Yeah.
This is the marriage of Batman. It's like the one thing no one ever saw coming. Like Batman getting married and settling down. It's like, no way. That's crazy talk. And so, it's a pretty monumental moment. I would say this is probably even bigger than, Action Comics 1000. So you're talking about something as big as this, and then it's like, well, somebody's going to spoil it, so it might as well be us. But, why, though?
Right.
I mean, if spoilers are out there, sure, but it won't come from, a reputable source like the New York Times.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
just because
that's
you own the spoiler doesn't mean that you didn't spoil the book.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because comic companies desperately on some level want so-called traditional media to talk about them again, and if outing their own stories is a way to do it.
Could be. I mean, the last thing he says is that I stand by my belief that Batman number 50 is one of the best single-issue periodicals of the last decade, that it is a special moment in comic book history, and that if it's not the book we think we want, it's the book we need.
Here's the problem I have with it.
I see what you did.
The problem I have with this is DC spoiling it gives it credibility.
That's what I think.
Yeah, well, I'm saying but CBR or Bleeding Cool spoiling a scan. 1, not everyone catches that. 2, a lot easier to be like, well, that might not be the actual case. 3, local comic book people. I've never heard of a spoiler coming out and people being like, oh, some asshole spoiled a comic for me, so I'm not gonna buy it. Like
Yeah.
it's different when the company. It'd be like when Infinity War came out and Marvel was like, so here's how it ends.
Right.
I hope you go see it still.
Well, don't worry. Kevin Feige went and did an interview on CNN and said, "This is going to be, by the way, how it ends."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he's like, "Cool," because the reality is everyone's going to spoil it on Reddit anyway. So I thought you should know that we want you to enjoy it for its quality, and and if someone's going to spoil it, it might as well be the people who made it. So here's the ending. That's so backwards. It's like, because here's the thing, no one knows how to put the genie back in the bottle. Like, books are going to get spoiled. They're going to get spoiled at, like, a 100th of a speed than they ever were. So there's no way to get behind it or get in front of it except to, like, put yourself into a media blackout. So they're just
and you guys have done that. When Infinity War came out, like a week beforehand, like I've been with Rob. We'll be in the car and he'll be like, I haven't checked Twitter in a couple days.
That's
Why?
the thing,
Media blackouts at the movie hits.
I did. You know what? We do this for a living. I managed to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, definitely. Like once, because I saw it trending, and it was like, Batman spoiled. I was like, okay, well, I'm not reading anything.
Yeah.
Like, I've been off Twitter the whole time, so I'm like, okay, like aside from like a post here and there, like I'm not really worried about it. Like I'm not gonna go check out the spoilers, and I understand that. But what you're talking about here, I mean, I get with movies, okay, that's kind of be expected. With comics, it's kind of to be expected. But I'm with Benny on this. It's one thing if just like some place out there, some comic book, website out there spoils it. And it's another if DC says, yeah, like we gave it to New York Times to spoil.
Right.
Because then it's like, well, no, this is actually what's happening. And it's not questionable anymore.
Yeah, the worst part about that, in my opinion, though, is New York Times, like, they didn't just go, here's the ending, what do you think? They I read the article. So they literally, almost like in a novel format, explain what happens in the book.
That's
This
hilarious.
isn't just like, here's what's going on and here's how we're going to talk about it. It's like, page 1, scene 1. You're like, what?
It's basically like watching a less good version of one of our videos. If I ever worried about my own journalistic integrity working online, I don't have to anymore because I know I'm at least good enough for the New York Times.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'm going to just throw these out there. We got a subscription from Tommy G, 725. Thank you so much. A resub, 6 months. John Mortbeard, thank you so much. Music Man has resubbed for 7 months in a row. And we've also got a bunch of bits. And right now, a resub from Seraph31, 8 months in a row. Thank you guys so much. Why is Joel the biggest box?
People. Splooge.
Wait, what?
People.
Joel's box is... It's just Joel's closer to his camera.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. But that is disappointing, to be honest. I mean, that's just kind of like, damn, like I don't know why they would make that choice. I mean, to just blatantly spoil it like that. I mean, it's not like they had to worry about Marvel. I mean, like nobody cared about the marriage of Kitty Pryde and Colossus.
No.
Like it would have been cool if it had happened like 20 years ago, but it didn't. So it doesn't matter.
It's way too late.
So,
Well, the funny thing is, Marvel has been doing it since at least 2005. Like, I don't understand why this is suddenly now a topic. I think it's because
it was the perfect storm.
Well, I think it's it's everything in like comics journalism, in comics, in the comics industry, in comics fandom is boiling over to this like hotbed where like everyone's angry and miserable and frustrated. So like
all the time,
this triggered everybody. But the fact is, like, Marvel spoiled the end of every event they have ever had since 2004.
I guess more people
releasing
cared.
comics that happen after it.
Well, not even just, I mean, like, they do
Sure
that literally, but they also have desperately told you what happens in USA Today, in any mainstream publication, just for the opportunity to get the name Marvel in a mainstream publication.
Yeah.
Like you remember Joe Quesada's whole thing about like his approach to promoting Civil War, to promoting Secret Invasion, was like, I'm gonna get on the Tonight Show, I'm gonna get an article in USA Today or maybe the New York Times or some or Entertainment Weekly, and they're just desperately giving you every little bit of information and doing it in the most inflammatory way to get people talking about it. And so and the other thing is, it's not a bad tactic in terms of success rate, because all they want is for mainstream eyes to look at this niche market.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
They want New York Times readers to go, Batman's getting married, huh? Kind of like I don't know, when Superman died and everyone's like, Superman's dying, huh? I guess I better get my ass to a comic book store. Like,
This might be worth something.
Well,
today.
that's what you want to do. Then you take out like a front page ad. You just say like an ad in the New York Times, like for the first time ever in the history of comic books, Batman's getting married.
right.
And like, I
Or
mean,
have an
that'll
interview
be
with Tom
interesting enough.
King. Why not have
Or
an interview
you
with
can-
Tom King about it in the book?
Yeah.
You could do any number of things to draw eyes to it without spoiling exactly what happens.
Absolutely. The way that they did it is egregious.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty irresponsible.
Yeah, like
lame.
awkward silence.
Right.
No,
I mean,
and that-
Egregious, irresponsible, and some people weren't even happy with it. Is the truly amazing thing. So people are pre-disappointed before
Yeah.
the book even comes
Well,
out.
but I don't really feel bad about the effect it has on comic book stores, because we've had this conversation before. There are a lot of comic book stores out there that are like, okay, so people coming here to buy comics isn't the main reason they come here anymore. Like the market is shifting to like games and stuff like that. And like a lot of companies are shifting over to like that's what Jason does. Shifts over to like trading cards, tabletop games, all that kind of stuff.
You have to.
And comics are still there. There's a ton of comics for you to buy, but it's not just a comic book store. But there are comic book stores who are strictly comic books and nothing else. And in my mind, if they haven't adapted to the comic book market, it was only a matter, or I guess the changing market, it was only a matter of time before they went under anyway. All this does is just kind of underscore the fact that they're lagging behind in a really bad way. So I don't feel too bad about that.
I agree with you on that one. I really do. I feel bad for those ones that are like, I was a comic book store in the 80s and the 90s. This is my business. Why can't it work anymore? But that's how businesses change and adapt and move on. I miss those, you know. But you know what I also miss? Diners.
Makers. Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is I also miss diners. When was the last time you went to a diner that wasn't a Denny's?
We have,
Yeah.
You know, like-
Well, you don't live in Jersey, so you throw a rock, you hit a diner here.
Well, what
We're
I'm
open
saying
24
is,
hours.
like,
It's great.
Well,
I'm
what
gonna
I'm
go to
saying
one
is
of
like
those.
old, like strictly comic book comic books places. I hate to say it, but they are a thing of the past. As much fun as I loved going over to there, you know what I also loved going to? Funko Land, because they sold old school video games.
Yeah.
You know, and they had to adapt and turn into a hot topic. And now
Like,
GameStop's
Playboy
going
or
under
Plug
because
It.
of digital sales. Like, you're seeing it all over in the market as things are shifting in entertainment and digital, all those stuff. And comic book stores need, like, the ones that I've seen after traveling the entire United States that succeed are the ones that are like, we have game nights 5 nights a week.
Yes.
Because you know what happens? People go there to play cards, they buy a bunch of cards, and while they're there, they see Batman 50, and they're like, all right, cool. You know, and that's what brings people in.
Magic.
You know
exactly
what I
it.
think the biggest issue for them is that it's the idea of the pre-order. If you pre-order anything anywhere else, you have to put money down on that.
Yeah.
They're taking pre-orders without getting any money. So, of course, I can just go in there and cancel it because I'm not having an awkward conversation with you about getting my money back. I just go, I'm not coming to pick it up. Sorry. Or I didn't even say it. I just don't show up.
Yeah, you just don't show up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you got to start taking their money. If you want to pre-order something, if you want to pre-order that many variants, you have to put the money down.
Right.
I've
Sorry.
been in stores that'll do that. Like, if you want more than one copy, then you're going to prepay for everything other than the one.
You have to. It's like that's insane. I'm sorry. That's just insane. That's absolutely insane.
Well, it used to be.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a tangent, but like, if you talk to any comic book retailer, they have been hurt by the bag. You know what is that called? Where you leave your reservation. You know, you drop a whole bunch of books into one.
Oh, like
pull list.
the pull list?
Yes.
Full list,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where they've been hurt by pull lists, where it's like they went on vacation, they forgot they had a pull list, they just dropped out for a while, things got hard, money got tight, and suddenly they have like $600 worth of books that are just sitting there and they're like burning a hole in this paper bag under the counter that they didn't sell, that they order for these people, and then they just don't go to that store anymore because they're just so awkward. I know too many stores that don't have any policy besides just like we have a pull lists. You know, set yourself up, but like no credit card or anything. Like, after 2 months, I charge a credit card for the books, and you can come get them whenever you want to, and they're gonna be in great condition. Like, end of story. Like any video store,
Or they hold it for a limit. Like if I call GameStop and I go, hey, can you hold me a game? They have a 48-hour policy.
Boom.
Yeah, that's it. That's what you get it for.
Yeah, there's any number of institutions that are doing the things that comic book stores either are doing or should be doing in place that can prove to you how to make it work and how you can like continue viability. And you know, so I'm and the ones that follow those trends, the ones that listen to those pieces of advice, they succeed, or they don't because like the market sucks, but like not for lack of trying. The ones that were just like throwing up their hands, going like, I don't understand, my entire comic book collection is over here rotting in long boxes and no one's buying them. Like, no, they're never going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's okay. So you were talking about this earlier. How does Walmart fit into all this?
Good question.
Okay, so
They're doing comics now.
A week ago, Walmart started pushing out. DC has now launched the 100-issue special at Walmart. It's a lot of like best issues for Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, stuff like that.
And some original work, but they're shorts.
Right, they're shorts. What it's turned into now is this combined with New York Times is showing that DC is not entirely focused on local comic book stores anymore.
And
they're trying to find. They're not focused on the comic book store model. They're focused on the general population now. I mean, if you think about it, getting your comics at Walmart makes a lot more sense than driving to the dingy store 5 miles out of the middle of nowhere in trying to get, like, you go to the comic book store for you. When I buy video games, I'll get them at Walmart sometimes, but you go to the specialty store for all the other stuff.
Right.
And and that's what DC's starting to do. But if
most
you combine,
towns have a Walmart. Most towns don't have a comic book store.
And that's what they're doing. They're trying to find a way to reach into a broader market, and it's creating once again a problem for these comic book stores,
right,
because
they're
like
it is really causing a problem. Like, I don't think that Walmart's selling 2 DC books that are mostly.
The argument is that the comic book store can't carry it.
Right. It is. They are provided by Diamond, so I'm surprised that they're exclusive to Walmart.
Interesting,
but. They are these 2 books that have one story apiece, and the story is like probably 11 pages, maybe less. Like, this is not hurting the comic book store so much as it is trying to broaden the comic book reading market. Actually, if it works the way that DC would like it to work, it should help the specialty market, because Walmart is not going to start selling. They're going to dedicate a wall to the newest releases. No. So let's say let's say there's a kid who is just in such a fog from video games and their Twitter spaces that they have no idea what a comic book is. But for some reason they're wandering through like the book section of the Walmart, and they happen upon this $5 100-page comic with Batman on it, and they love it. They have to go to a comic book store or on Comixology or through DC's new streaming service, which will only provide certain digital comics and not all, by the way. It's not a Comixology or a Marvel Unlimited allegory.
Or go to a GameStop, maybe, because they're also talking about
that's it. Well, I actually have a little information on that, because we've been talking with GameStop, and I didn't sign an NDA, and they don't seem to be private about it.
Right on.
GameStop wants to start selling comics as well from Marvel and DC. The issue is Diamond. Apparently, Diamond's doesn't have a proper UPC code for individual issues.
Yes,
so
they don't. We have a store called Books-A-Million, and it causes a huge problem for them, because Books-A-Million does have a friggin' huge wall dedicated to comics. In fact, most people don't buy their comics from Books-A-Million, so if you want like a first print of some of an indie title, go to Books-A-Million and check the back, because they're all there. Because Books-A-Million put all their indie titles into 5 boxes and sold them for $1 a piece.
Oh, shit.
Because no one's buying them, and that UPC problem is causing a real issue. They have to hand type in every single code.
Damn.
Because they can't scan them because the Diamond...
Again, archaic.
Yeah. Well, apparently the way GameStop's doing it is they're forcing Diamond to bag them in a separate bag with individual UPCs.
See?
Yeah, that's a smart way to do it.
A great idea.
Or just force them to change entirely. I mean, but here's the thing, though. Like, if you're following the trends of like newer comic book readers are reading trades. They're not really reading like single issues. Like they're going into like trade paperbacks and waiting till the whole story finishes and then reading that. And so I understand the concern that retailers are coming from when they say, well, if Walmart's going to start selling trades and people are starting to read trades instead of single issues, well, there goes our market. But again, like, sorry about your luck. That's the way the market goes. So either you can
we'll
adapt.
See the death of the traditional comic store in our lifetime.
Exactly.
There is
but
no
again,
doubt about it.
If you're DC, and even if you're Marvel, it does make the most sense. Like, why would you not put your product out there where the most number of people will see it?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've been reading comic books for years and years and years and years. But when I think of a comic book store, I think of a spot that I just kind of like sneak in there a little bit, buy what I need, and then leave. It's like I really don't want people to see me walking in here. Like it's not necessarily that it's bad. It's just kind of like
I mean, some of those comic shops look like they could sell comics or drugs. You're not quite sure what you're walking into.
Exactly. You go in for action comics.
I love Jason's store, but if you look around that neighborhood, you're like, I don't know about this place.
The store needs to diversify their services. Drugs is always going on.
Well, and comics are great. I mean, they're pushers. Once sometimes the entry level comics are pretty cheap, but then you keep coming back for more. It's a pretty allegorical system.
Yeah.
Hey man, I got that uncut action
I'm
comic.
just saying. I mean, how many people shop at a local Walmart every day? How many people shop at like a Best Buy or like a GameStop or go to like Barnes and Noble even? Because Barnes and Noble sells trades. But like how many people shop at these various locations versus how many people are going to walk into a comic book store and buy a comic? Like people would, like the average person would walk into a comic book store and buy a comic if they were in like an outlet mall or like a local outside mall that happened to have one.
The ones that are
like,
actually in good position, but
grocery
most of them are
store,
like
like
the
they used to
backsides
be.
of town.
Exactly. Most folks are going to go out of their way. They're not going to Yelp a comic book store and then go to that comic book store and buy a comic. Like most people, I don't think are going to do
Tiffany
that.
and I
Like,
do that
think,
all the time.
I was just about to be like,
Well, no, but you guys are comic book
That's
fans, though.
We
Yeah,
literally
You're
do
already
that all the
fans.
time.
They're not bringing in new fans that way, I would say.
Yeah, like I don't
that's
think
the
the average
thing.
person, like somebody went to go see Infinity War, I don't think is going to come out and Yelp a comic book store.
Absolutely
no,
not.
the only thing we
Yeah.
have run into are a lot of parents bringing a kid there for the first time, and you can see it on the parents' face. They don't know where they are, but they know the kid's looking for something.
Right.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
thing
that I
is,
could see.
They
Yeah.
don't even, like, the thing is, the way to make the new fans, though, is to trickle in comics in mainstream outlets. It's why you should, it's why when Marvel has a big book, the Ant-Man, there's going to be a book called Ant-Man and the Wasp. There should be books sold or at least available, like a preview print. You know, like they take a loss, Marvel, and they take losses to print up free comic book day books. Every time there's a main book, there should be like an 11-page or 8-page or even 4-page preview book that's available when you buy a ticket for an MCU movie or a DC movie.
Oh, you mean like an ash can?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I could definitely
I've
see them
never
doing
understood
that.
why that's
And
not
movie
there.
theaters do little magazine things anyway. There's usually a whole rack of them as you go in. Oh,
Those
coming
should be
attractions.
available at the front kiosk just to grab. I've seen posters up there just for free for grabs.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say that. I've gone
Well-
to movies where they're like, welcome to the movie. Here's a poster. Oh, cool.
Yeah, they did it. They did it for Black Panther by us.
Only if you buy the Dolby Digital, like extra expensive
You got to
ticket.
get the special one.
You got to
but
get
got
the
a
special
comic.
ticket. But if you get but most people aren't going to do that. They're going to buy the mainstream ticket or that awful 3D ticket. Stop going to see 3D movies, everybody.
For real.
But
They stopped being cool a while ago.
they
Avatar
stopped
was the
being
last
cool
good
pretty
one.
much immediately after they came.
Yeah, so Avatar was the last
Unless
one.
they were actively filmed in 3D, it is not worth the extra money.
It's not worth the
Okay.
extra money even if it is because it's
All
distracting.
right, hey,
But, like
Dredd was pretty cool in 3D.
Dredd was cool too. Yeah,
I
Dredd
did
was
not see
called
Dredd in
Dredd
3D.
3D,
and
and that was all.
actively filmed in 3D.
Yes.
Pretty
All right,
cool.
fair enough. I will concede to Dredd.
As a guy with glasses, though, 3D is a pain in the ass for me to watch.
Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, Tiffany, you know
Never
exactly what I'm
thought
talking
I
about.
know
Yeah, it's such a
exactly
pain in
what
the
you're
ass.
talking
Tiffany
Yeah.
wears glasses?
But
Well, no, those are just like stylish glasses. She just wears
Yeah.
them.
yeah, she's a
It's
fake
like-
game girl.
Yeah, she's a fake game girl.
I'm like Clark Kent. I don't
Oh,
Mississippi.
it all makes sense now.
No, she is
But
blind.
yeah, no, I'm just saying. I mean, it makes the absolute most sense. It's for the same reason we don't upload our videos on Vimeo. It's for the same reason. No, it's for the same reason that like we do all those things. Like, sure, those markets are there, and they're definitely great to tap into. And like, sure, it couldn't hurt to look at it. But what I'm saying is, if you're DC and you're Marvel, and the comic book community is very much a niche market, relatively speaking, to like every other form of print media out there, then like, why would you not try to get it to the greatest exposure you possibly could?
Exactly.
And if doing that is just like great big huge stores and kind of leaving comic book stores behind, that's the way it goes. I mean, especially because we talked about this, like Benny and I had this conversation once, and we've had this conversation too. If I have to make the choice between going onto an airplane with like 50, like individual copies, 50 floppies, or like having it all on a tablet, I'll have it all on a tablet.
Totally.
Because
yeah.
it's one thing I have to carry around, and I could read them all seamlessly.
The thing about
So many
that,
good apps now.
if I may, I think there's room for comic book stores, and I think that the fact is,
Oh, yeah.
like, if because Marvel and DC both love to make a lot of books. Image, for example, makes a lot of books, and and Walmart, Target, and any other like mainstream, more like saturated marketplace is not going to dedicate the shelf space that a niche market store like a comic book store is going to. That's why it actually makes more sense for GameStop to sell the top 3 big 2 titles, right? Like GameStop sells Spider-Man, Batman, and Justice League books. That's it, right? Like, then I'm interested in comics. Where do you go for the rest of them? Well, you can go online, where most people should probably go. Or if you want to like have the physical experience, you go to the specialty market and you get the comic book store like experience that way. You get the rest of the books because like they're not going to dedicate the amount of shelf space you required to support the comic book industry. And if the comic book industry doesn't want to like implode or deliberately scale back their supply, then they have to at least somewhat foster or nurture the comic book market. That's why I don't understand why comic book stores are like, Walmart's selling 2 books? 2? We're done for. Like,
well, yeah. So I was seeing tweets and reactions. Like, some local comic book stores in some areas are like, we're going to go to every Walmart and buy up all of those issues. Like, what does that accomplish?
That seems like a poor use of money.
Yeah, you bought $200 in trades. Congrats.
Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, well, you bought all the books for $5 at Walmart. What are you going to do? I know what they're going to want to do. Sell them at their comic book store. And if they do, you're a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say that.
And what's more, by the way, Walmart will go, oh, these comics are selling. Order more.
Really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing,
right.
too. Like, you walk into a comic book store, most comic book stores that I've been to are not new person friendly. Not in the sense of like the staff who work there, but in the sense of just like organization and just having shit in places where it's easy to grasp.
Yes.
Like you walk in there and like if you've been to that store for a long time, you know exactly what the new releases are. But like you walk into that store and all you just see are like it's like the paradox of choice. You just see like a litany of comic books everywhere, and you're like, okay, well, I want to read Batman. Okay, well, which Batman do you want to read? You want to read like old Batman? You want to read new Batman?
That's
it's like
at least
I just
a
want to read
conversation.
Batman.
Most of these folk are not having that. They're just like, I don't know. They're either like, yeah.
There's a place in New Jersey called Little Shop of Comics.
Nice.
And it is literally it's a parrot. It's like a joke, but like it's also a tiny little shop. And when you walk into that place, it's like the people who run it used to work in a bookstore because they very intelligently put all of their trades up front, starting with the kids' stuff because that's who they want to get in there. They have a little section. All the shelves are very low. All the kid trades are there. And then you go further into the store. Everything's very spaced out. Everything's more like laid out in a really approachable and honestly very pleasant manner. And then all their floppies are in the back. There was always at least 3 people working in that store, seemingly, at least the times that I've been there. And they're all very helpful. And then like they do the thing where they're like, hey, can I help you with anything? And if not, they just go about their business until you do need something or you want to like check out.
Yeah.
It's one of the best run little stores I've ever been to. And like it's just a completely different philosophy.
Yeah.
There's a great place I found out here actually for the first time. People told me to go. They're called Yellow Jackets, which already points for having an obscure character as your name. And Yellow Jackets there on the sign giving you the thumbs up. And again, it's set up exactly like you said, Tip. Kid stuff at the front, new releases on a spinner rack, and then clearly the dude owned a bookstore because he wore a suit to work in a comic book store, and there's like easy listening Carpenter's music in the background, and then just walls of trades, and everything is in alphabetical order. And I'm like, that was a nice comic book store. I want to go back there.
Yeah.
See, like John Moore Beard had a really good point. Like he said at his store, they've got like a new to comics section. And it's just like and see Tiffany, I think that's a genius idea. Like you literally create a section new to comics, and it's just all like the rebirth trades. Yep. And like all different Marvel trades. And it's just like here's the trades that you want to like if you want to get caught up, buy like these 5 trades. Because I mean literally if I'm a comic book store owner and like a mom walks in with her son and she's like, my son just got done seeing, some movie or whatever it is, Batman, whenever in the hell they end up making that movie. And like he really likes Batman. Like, I want to get him some Batman comics. Where do I start? I would be like, buy these 5 trades. Done. Yeah, and and then you're completely caught up. But like the issue is that there's because you're talking about comic book fans running comic book stores, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But when it's one of those things where the more you know, the more crazy things get.
Right. It reminds me all the way back to when we all first met, Rob. When you would make your videos and you'd be like, oh, I'm making them like you and I had a talk and I'm like, I make my fans for the brand new comic book reader. And because every video could easily be someone's first video, and you would be like, well, people know about what's that guy you always talk about? That Jim Jaspers. How do they not know about that?
No. I knew people didn't know about Jim Jaspers. But no, I mean I did the same thing. Like the whole explained characters premise was based on like you have no idea who this character is. I'm going to teach you about them.
There was some old classic comic book creator who had a philosophy about that. I think it's Stan Lee. Yeah. Is it something like every comic is somebody's first?
Well, the problem is that Stan Lee's almost done with all his living. So.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make it any less relevant and important.
Oh no, I'm not saying it doesn't make it relevant. What I'm saying is we don't have any more Stan Lees.
No,
well, like, that's the thing is that that's you're embodying his philosophy.
You have
that's
to
like
be the steward of it.
Yeah, you're taking up the mantle more or less. It's
nice.
Yeah.
By the way, talking just to pick up back what Rob was saying about like the having a new section or like new to comics or whatever, that story I was talking about, When I went in there, Wonder Woman was either coming out or had just come out. And right there in the kids section, they had faced out like 5 or 6 different like kids books just for Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was like, damn,
You know who else
you
does
guys.
that?
I'm not hating on Stan Lee, guys. I like Stan Lee. Why would I hate on Stan
No,
Lee?
I was saying Rob is embodying the spirit of Stan
Yeah.
Lee. I'm saying it's good.
Yeah,
By
thank
saying
you,
someone's done
Sal.
with his
No,
living.
like that's
Now his spirit will haunt him.
that's what what's it called? That's what bookstores do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like it works. I mean, you know.
it does. It really
Yeah,
does.
you go to like any bookstore and it's like it's like here's like the top sell, like what is it, the New York Times bestsellers list,
Right.
And it's like here are the books that just came out and they made the New York Times bestsellers list, and then there's like, and because I saw that in an airport, like I was going through an airport and I was looking for something to read while I was on a flight, and it was like the New York Times bestsellers list this month. And then like the New York Times bestsellers for the year, and then like our picks, and then it was 3 shelves done. And like I went through that, and I was like, that looks cool. It was easy to grab. But like you walk into like Sal, like that was the same thing. Like if you took the average person, when you went to that store out in Denver, where I can't remember what that one was, but Mile High Comics.
Mile High
you go to
Comics,
Mile High Comics. Yeah, like you take like an average person who just got done seeing Infinity War, and you walk them into that bookstore, their head's gonna explode trying to figure out what
That
they
is
want.
not for
Like,
them. Like
Yeah, they'll go in there and just totally freeze up. And then you walk
Turn
into
back, get from
store.
here.
You walk into a local comic book store and you see like floppies on top of. You have so many floppies or overlapping other floppies. You've got like trades where all you can see is like the spine, and it's just like walls of them,
well-
and it's just like, what in the heck?
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, like, and here's the thing, like, comic book stores have only a finite amount of space themselves. It's dedicated. They have to figure out what they can prioritize. They have to keep their overhead low. They gotta pay rent. They gotta like fight emerging markets, and also like they're saddled with thousands and thousands of books they can't return that don't sell. And that's another problem that they have. And like comic book stores, like I would never open a store because of how
I
hard
thought about
must
it way
be.
back in the day until I learned what it goes into it, and I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
no, that's like a death sentence.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you need to like. There's.
You
a
also
great
wanted to open a
video-
Blockbuster.
There's a great video of a guy who owns a store. I think it's in L.A. or in the California area, where he's like talking about how, like, a lot of comic book store like owners that he's encountered, and I'm not saying this is the case across the board. I'm just saying this one specific example of this one guy. He's talking about how like people make comic book stores because they love comics and they want to like get into the industry, and it's like. No, you need to know how business works. Like, you need to take a class on how to like manage a business. You need to know like all these different facets of how to run a business, and you need to know your business. I mean, like, remember when they dropped that sales chart of like the top selling comics in the United States, and the top like 50 were all children's books, and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
like. I don't even see a Spider-Man on here. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, because Spider-Man sells 125,000 copies a month. That sounds like a lot until you remember that, like, the number one kids comic or kids young adult book that's comic themed or the top number one manga book sold like 1 million. And you're like, oh, we're talking about, like, chump change here. And then you're talking about, like, an industry that exists to support an industry that really only makes, like, $8 million a year.
Oof.
Can you imagine trying to get into an industry that only makes $8 million a year total?
Well, that's why I say like when things kind of shift in the way they are, I think it might actually be the best thing for the comic book store market, because like
Totally.
because I imagine in the next like 10 to 15 years you'll see kind of like a repeat of how the comic bus impacted stores, in the sense that like stores everywhere were shutting down. Like the amount of comic book stores you have now is a lot smaller than the number of comic book stores that you had back then, even like the early 90s.
Yeah.
And so like I could see it just decreasing even more. But if comic book stores, like traditional comic book stores, begin to go away, and it's just more of like a small number of comics there, I think you'd find more success, because people go in there and they say, well, I got this trade, but like what happens, like this trade is just the main story. So like what tie-ins go into it?
Right.
And they're like, well, just read this, and this, and read it in this order. And like, and that's it.
They need to have a knowledgeable group of people who work there in order to actually facilitate that kind of job. At a store I go to occasionally, Zap Comics in Wayne, they have a guy who like knows everything, like reads everything, so he knows what's coming out. So you can ask him those kinds of questions, and he's like, "Oh, here's your recommendation." So like, but I can't say that that's the case in most comic book stores. Is there's like a charismatic, knowledgeable character? Like I guess that's why there's also emerging markets that come out like us, who are like, "Hey, here's some books you should check out." You know?
Yeah. Like not socially
Comic
awkward
czar.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's what you run into. Where like you go to comic book stores, like the store owner's just like really socially awkward, never quite developed people skills, but thought it was a good idea to open a store that routinely deals with people. And then it's like,
Never looks
okay.
him in the eye.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just weird stuff like that. And it's like, well, what should I pick?
I've met comic shop owners that can't make eye contact. They're just like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird and it's really strange to me. And still like I don't know. I think it's the natural shift of things. I mean, comic book stores I see in 20 years comic book stores won't really exist anymore. And if they do, it'll be just like a very very small number of them. Just almost minuscule.
So bringing this back around. Well, go ahead, Tiffany. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was literally going to do the same thing. I was literally going to be like, so like honestly, at the end of the day, though, did DC do this intentionally? Are they attacking local comic book stores, or is this just a good business model for them, even if it makes zero sense to us? Like, is this just part of their business plans? And it's like, I'm not trying to attack you, local comic book stores. I'm just trying to run my business. Like, what do you think it is?
I think you're totally
It was
right.
a cold business move.
Yeah, I think that it's more, if they're guilty of anything against local comic book stores, it's not regarding them.
Yes, I would say that definitely. Going, here's a good way to bring our market further out there. Oh, you're all mad that we didn't give you exclusive books? Why? How could you be mad? Like that kind of an attitude.
Well, they could always, their response probably like, well, sorry, but like, you know who's not bitching about this? Any other store that we work with.
Yeah.
No, like I said, I mean, I don't think that DC has it out for comic book stores.
No.
I think it's like comic book stores just haven't kept up.
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely.
like, look, man, this train's going. So either you got on board when the train took off, or you're one of the last people to jump on. But if not, then like you're sitting back there on the tracks, waiting, like hoping the train comes back, and it won't.
Yeah.
So
It's funny because like 9 times out of 10, when you see these stores complain, like Marvel fucked me, I'm stuck with all these books, or DC went around me and shit like that. 9 times out of 10, when I see these things, you look into the store and they're very old school, very 90s.
Let me see your books. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
They haven't updated. They haven't started carrying other products. Like their entire business model is reliant on DC and Marvel doing well and liking them.
Yes.
And that's never good to do with your business, to rely entirely on one thing.
No,
Yes.
that's true.
I mean, a lot of people go, why aren't you guys streaming the weekly poll on YouTube? For that exact reason. That's why it's on Twitch.
Yeah.
So we're not all lost into one market.
Right.
Yeah.
when that ship sinks, I don't want to go down with it.
No, it's,
exactly.
it's true. And it's kind of funny because at the end of the day, comic book stores have a much larger problem in the fact that their distributor is a monopoly and they're unwilling to take them on. They'll yell at the companies who make the comic books, but not the people who provide them.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe instead of complaining to DC and Marvel, you should be trying to figure out how to stop the juggernaut that is Diamond, who is just, where else are you going to get your books if not from there, you know?
Yeah, I don't understand how. Like, I don't understand why Marvel and DC don't just like direct distribute to comic book stores. I mean, granted, there are a lot, and maybe that's what they're shooting for. Like literally, maybe they're trying to push it in a direction where they just like direct distribute to Walmart, Barnes and Noble, GameStop, and like they completely cut out Diamond distributors as the middleman.
That would be an ideal future.
I had a
It
thought
would be,
about why that is, and I think it might be because Marvel and DC never asked for a comic book store to exist. Like, Marvel and DC existed in a time when the comics were sold on newsstands and in grocery stores and in convenience stores, and then the comic book store market emerged on its own, you know? And comic book companies were kind of like, well, I guess I'll cater to that because you specifically made a store for our product. But it's not like Marvel and DC seeded these companies and like, or encourage them to open them. I mean, they exist, so they extend them a courtesy in as much as like, we'll send you promotional posters and we, you know, like we'll do orders and stuff like that. But like, it seems openly hostile, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, you would like to have our very, very like exclusive, hard to get variant? Well, sure, we'll help you out if you order 1,000 copies of one issue. Like, that doesn't seem like the kind of hand-in-hand, mutually beneficial relationship that you'd expect from from an industry that created this other industry. Like, the comic book store market emerged from a perceived need, but it certainly wasn't encouraged by the comic book publishing companies.
And Diamond is
we're
just
happy with selling them
weird
from a
too.
store. Like, no, like we'll be happy to sell comics and quick checks. It's just like you decide to open a shop.
Yeah.
I mean that is a really good point.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, like the comic book
I
store
didn't
was
until
not
just
there at
now.
the
I'm like,
beginning.
you know, nobody ever asked for a comic book store.
No,
Yeah.
it's.
I'm not
it's
saying
true.
I don't like them, and I certainly don't want to be banned from them. I like going there. I'm
Now,
just saying,
Sal
like,
from Comic Pop is now banned from every comic book.
Every
I
comic
just-
book
I-
store.
I'm
But no,
just saying, like,
yeah,
it
no,
just-
Sal makes a good point.
it just seems like the comic book industry is kind of like, well, I mean, who asked you anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. That's a really good point. Yeah, I guess you can't really launch an unnecessary platform for selling a product and then in turn get mad because the providers of that product move to a different platform.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Like, yeah.
It's in a similar mindset to being like, well, now that Steam's here, GameStop, what the hell do I care about you for?
Yeah. Well, no, you have to sell to us.
Well, I mean, in
Why?
all
But
honesty,
GameStop.
video games used to be sold at Walmarts and Targets and like those
Yeah.
style of stores. Kmart. I remember getting my games at Kmart back
Yeah.
in the day.
So
GameStop,
and those
GameStop's going the way of the dodo bird, but yeah, same thing. No one asked for a specifically video game store.
No.
They're sold everywhere.
I
exactly.
bought
And
my
by
games
the
at a
way,
hardware store.
the market can only support one video game store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One.
Which actually, I'm not against the idea. I mean, let's be honest, man. If I can go to a grocery store, I can buy some eggs, some steak, I can buy some milk, I can get some laundry detergent,
And the 12 books you're going to
some
buy this
dish
month.
soap, and the 12 books I'm going to buy. It's
just
like it's
convenient.
one-stop shopping. It's like the most convenient thing ever. Yeah, yeah, dude. Yeah, Marvel DC, man. Start selling them shits at Meijer. Like that's what I want you guys to start doing.
As,
Yeah.
as much as I love the mom and pop shops, and I do love going down to like the old town areas and going to the mom and pop shops,
It's quaint.
I'm not gonna lie. There's times that I'm driving around and I'm going by Target and I'm like, I gotta get some TP, some coffee, some granola bars,
Yep,
the latest
batteries.
Nintendo Switch game, and while I'm there, I'll get some underwear. You know, like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, I definitely. Oh, I could go to GameStop and then go to a clothing store and then go to the grocery store,
Yep.
or it's all right at Target. Like,
Right.
Yeah, it's little comic book stores are quickly becoming the Radio Shack, where it's just
Yeah.
like, hey, we pretty much sell 3 things. Oh, you don't want those 3 things here anymore? Oh, you'd rather go to Best Buy? Oh,
Yeah.
Or you can get them from Amazon and they'll come to your house.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
Yeah.
But
The-
like,
A drone will fly it
the
there.
day the death of the comic book store will be when Marvel and DC do go direct market. Like
yeah.
there's no more Comicsology, just Marvel and DC have their own storefronts. Order your books from here and we mail them to your house the next day.
Oh God, dude, I would love that. Oh my God, dude. Yeah, if
Make
I
our
got
job
like 2 days
much
shipping
easier.
on those things.
Whatever happened to it? Do you guys remember that?
I think it
I
still
remember when I was a
exists.
kid. Yeah, when I was a kid, I ordered direct subscriptions from DC. Like, I want these 10 books, send them to my house.
Yeah. And they still do that, but I think that I don't
I
think
don't
they're
remember
as fast. Which is like
Okay.
inexcusable.
For real.
That's outrageous.
Well, it's like you make them. Like why do I need
You make that.
How
How are
many-
you slow?
how many
Go from the
middlemen
printer
do
to
you
the truck
need?
to my house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, like they've sadly got other things to do, man. They've got to enjoy their avocado toast. And,
yeah, it
Does
is.
everyone remember the CD? Remember how whole like Best Buy was started around the idea of just being go buy your CDs and DVDs there. They had officially Best Buy is like we're done with the CD now,
Yeah.
and now iTunes is debating shutting down iTunes and going entirely streaming.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
the entire music market is shifting over to full streaming. So in video games are entirely shifting over to digital video games, and movies are entirely going over to digital movies. So why should the comic book store still be a floppy place where you go get your paper
I
comic?
have a hard time moving on, and I think
Yeah.
Diamond props a lot of that up.
No, dude, that's 100% it, Joel. That's 100% it. It's older fans who they've been going into the same comic book store for the last like 15, 20, 30 years,
Which I
and they
can't
want to
blame
keep
them.
going into the same comic book store, and they don't want to see that go away because if that goes away, then well, how are they going to get their comics in the same way? Which means they'll have to figure out how Comicsology works. And admittedly, Comicsology can be a bit confusing, so no fault on their behalf.
Right.
But it's just like it's people who just don't want things to change. They like things being the way they are. Plus, you also have people who run the stores and they have their own livelihoods. But it's like, look, but like the whole of like the market space is not going to wait on you. Like you have to
Yeah.
be able to keep up with it, or you will get left behind. Because in all honesty, I think it's ridiculous for a comic book store, any comic book store, to look at Marvel and DC and say, do not go to like Best Buy or any of these other places where one, you can reach a larger audience, and two, like do it in a more streamlined way. Do not do that. Sell them to me because this is how I make my living. It's like, well, who gives a shit?
Totally.
Like that's your problem. So like we're in the business of making money and saving money.
And
so
let us not
you know.
forget either, any scenario that gets more eyes on comics in general is good for the industry as a whole.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
I think, just again to piggyback off of Rob here, I think it's not only the old mentality of how you get your books, but it's the concept of having said book that I can then go get signed.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's that old mentality of the collector's market. Now, I am guilty of that as well, where I'm like, I like to have certain books because I do want to give it to the person who created it and have them, like, personalize it for me. But the majority of my books are digital, and occasionally I'll get a printed one. So I don't want to see print go away entirely, because we certainly haven't seen that in terms of books. I mean, the fact is, sure, people read books online and they read them on their Kindles and their tablets and all that, whatever, right? But like the bookstore somehow still exists. You can still go and buy a copy of a book and read that book and then put it in the garbage.
And digital,
'Cause what else would you
digital book sales did not kill the book.
No.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
People thought it would too, in all honesty.
And they were
I
all,
thought
like,
it
it's
was
not even like
definitely
they were.
going to.
It's not even like they were like too early. You know, like no. I was only 10 years off. The book is still gonna die. Like, no, the book is still pretty much there, and it's gonna be there for a long time. The comic periodical is a younger thing, but still, I think there is a place for it. It's not that people don't want comic books. It's that they want the variety and the options to cater for their own lifestyle. And that's ultimately like, and the comic book industry needs to react to that. And the comic book industry, unfortunately, does not care about the livelihood of a third party industry that like wants that is supported by you. You know, like.
Well, it's also like unnecessary too.
Well, I mean, like, and it's arguable that it's unnecessary, but like, it's hard to argue it at length. You know, it's hard to say we need comic book stores. Without them, comic books wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I think that's a hard argument to make. But well, I think that's a hard argument to make. I would say if comic book stores never existed, I would say comic books might even be more successful now than they currently are, because with comic book stores being, and there is no way to know because we can't time travel or change. Like, there's so
not
reality
yet.
we
I
can
don't
go
want
to.
to.
But no, I understand what you're saying. Like, I understand, like, because at that point you're just kind of spitballing and you're just throwing out hypothetical situations. But I mean, okay, but okay, Tiffany made a good point with like floppy sales and collector markets, and to me that's a good point because when we were at Denver, Sam Humphrey was there, and I don't know if you were with me there, Sal. Like when I was talking to Sam Humphreys, and so like you were there, like talking to Sam Humphreys and saying, "Hey man, look, I love what you've done. Like your run on Green Lanterns is amazing." Having talked to like comic book writers, people would come up, they'd give them a book, and they'd say, "Hey, cool, thanks." They'd sign it, and they'll keep talking to you. Like, having a book autographed by a writer is a thing that happens.
Yeah.
But, like, walking up to a writer and saying, "Hey, like, I've actually read all your stuff, and your work is insane, and I love what you've done." To me, like, I would think that means more to a writer than just autographing a book and calling it a day. Because it means you actually read what they did. Like, anybody can buy a copy of Green Lanterns #1 from DC Rebirth and take it to somebody and get it signed, because then they'll turn around and sell it. They never read it. And who knows what's going to happen with that.
But they don't make a dime off of that experience. Like, and it costs money to appear at cons, so it's like you'll notice that down that alley, by the way, a lot of them were selling their own trades.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
But some of them weren't, you know, and some of them want to just have that genuine experience of meeting their fan base, and there's no like, you know, did they make a dime off the trade sales? Probably not really, you know, but there is a value to having the physical copy, which is why, like, if comics went all digital, you just reach out to DC. Yeah, you know what? I actually want issues 5, 12, and 16 in digital. I'll just order those, and they just print on demand, like Comicsology's new initiative is doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to skyrocket the cost because anything print on demand where you're not running like X number of quantity is going to be incredibly expensive to get a hold of.
True.
Yeah. But that's why I say, like, if I'm Sam Humphries and somebody walks up to me and they say, "Hey, man, I've loved your work on, like, Star-Lord, and I loved your work on, was it Star-Lord or Guardians of the Galaxy?" Star-Lord. And I loved your work on, I loved your work on Green Lanterns, and, like, I looked, you know, this. Yep. Then if I'm Sam Humphries, I'm thinking two things. One, this guy really read my stuff, which is awesome. And two, if I make a creator-owned book, I probably got somebody who will buy it. And that to me is really what I think kind of like, that writers are really like artists are the same way. Like, "Hey man, I love your work," you know, because I told Sam Humphries, like, "Look, like, I have 5 guys that I'll read anything they write, and like, you're one of those 5 guys." And so like when you have people who go out and they buy these comic books, or they buy them at Walmart or what have you, they read them and they enjoy it. The idea of saying, "Well, I really want to get this autographed," may be a thing, but they could just like go to a comic because it seems cool. They meet the writer of the story they love, and they say, "Hey man, I love your work," and they get to like meet that person and talk to him. You know, that's something they might choose to do instead. I mean, there's any number of things that go into the idea that comic book stores are kind of becoming unnecessary. But still, like I still stick by the idea that you know.
That's actually a good point. Well, it's an interesting point to make about Comic Cons because, first of all, what I was going to say was that's kind of like a niche of a niche. Like how many people go to cons, but the reality is, now that I'm thinking about it, there are more cons now than ever before. And odds are, if you live in like Utah or Kansas or Wyoming, you probably are closer to an annual Comic-Con than your regular comic shop.
Which is hard to believe, but true.
So like if you get all your comics digitally, but you go to the con once a year, maybe that's actually more economically viable than going to your comic store every couple of months.
Yeah.
Well, plus cons cater more than just comic books now.
Well, yeah.
Like cons are more of like a
everything.
geek culture experience. Yeah,
Right.
so it's games and it's tabletop games and it's video games. and
even
it's comic
cons
books and-
have adapted to the market.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've changed too. So you go to a comic book convention and it's like, okay, cool. Like there's comic books, so if I'm interested, I can check that out. But like, what I really want to see is this game, and they'll go over there and they'll check out. You know, they'll go there cosplay or they'll go to panels or whatever the case is. So yeah, it seems like everybody's adapting to the market except for comic book store, like a lot of comic book stores.
And I can meet
Just
Mike
kinda
Tyson and Elvira. That's always nice.
Right, that's
Tyson?
kind of that's a bucket list I never knew I was going to cross off.
Listen to his high pitched lisp. Yeah, I don't know.
Don't say it to his face, though.
Yeah,
No, I'm
bite
not
you.
going to talk shit to Mike Tyson.
Yeah, that's literally.
know,
I think
man.
actually, like that's
Don't do
literally
that.
an
He'll just
example.
punch you in the face. I think.
man.
I think at the end of the day, I don't think DC's screwing over local comic book stores. I think that what they did was irresponsible to their storytelling and to their fans. And I don't know I'm ever going to quite understand this business decision. I mean, seemingly this was their plan. This is what they intended on doing.
It could be damage control, though.
It could be.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
shittiest damage control I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
like it could
admitting
just
you
be they
did
don't
it
want
and
people
then
to know
saying it's
that they're. Oh yeah, I mean, like, it could also just be like, here's a theory. It could be that like the New York Times did what they were going to do, and DC didn't want it to seem like they weren't in control, and so
Right.
they put out the statement, right? Regardless, giving the New York Times that much information was sort of irresponsible. The Times has every right to report on whatever information that you give them, even if you ask them nicely not to. That's their journalistic integrity, and that's their journalistic choice to do so. Don't give them the information if you don't want them to put it out there. Clearly, you wanted them to do it. I don't understand why. I'm not sure half the people who work at DC understand why they want to do that. Tom
Well, I mean,
King
even
certainly
Tom
doesn't
King
seem to
does.
get it.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
he
it's also
doesn't.
like-
And his attempt at damage control was hilarious. Go to Twitter, read the comments he got. If you want pure, uncut anger and vitriol, you read those tweets.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is
Which
either
is
the most.
disappointing because I love Tom King.
Well, this is either the most incredible, like, staged marketing ploy that I've ever seen, or this is just, like, totally messed up and a complete sign of disrespect from DC all around.
Well, I
Yeah.
think it's also, it could be that they were like, well, we also want to maintain our relationship with New York Times. I mean, for God's sake, they're writing about us. But also, like, we know it doesn't work. Marvel's been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, it just
Yeah.
doesn't work. You
Yeah.
know, you do it one time. And, you know, it's like, and by the way, like, they're not going to care anymore. Like, it's not like when Mr. Miracle ends, the bombshell reveal at the end of the book is going to be written up about in the New York Times. The New York Times is only doing this story as a courtesy because it's a slow time. They're like, I don't know. I guess we could write about the Batman thing because it's kind of big. You know, like, DC didn't call the New York Times to tell them we're killing Superman. They were like, are you killing Superman? We gotta do something. You know, like, they that was a cultural phenomenon, but, like, it's not gonna be every time. You know, like,
I'm imagining that phone call. Like, hey guys, I have a great idea. It's like, what's your great idea? Let's call like one of the biggest newspaper companies in the world and tell them we're killing Superman.
yeah.
Is this a
can't help
hostage
but laugh at
situation?
that.
Do you have him right there?
I mean, that's a juicy headline, but, like, I can't imagine if I were a casual reader or if I was a non-comics reader and I picked up my copy of the Wall Street Journal and it was like, you know, Spider-Man's getting remarried. I'd be like, what, who?
Yeah.
What is this? Why is this taking up real estate in my periodical about the news?
Yeah. It's bizarre. I mean, like, the fact is, like, typically when a company gives something like this to a news outlet, they write a press release themselves.
Yeah.
So the DC gave them everything that they needed
No, they
to
just gave
do
them a
this.
copy of the book and they said, like, do whatever you want.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's not like they didn't even. Presumably, either they wrote something that like indicated like all of this, or they just said,
no,
just go for it.
It could be demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding of the size and pull of each of their respective industries. Like, DC was like, man, we are going to get so many readers if we get this thing ruined in the New York Times. And the New York Times like, man, we are going to get so many comic book readers if we ruin their book in our periodical.
They're going to be so on board with us at that point.
What are you doing?
It's like this is like the opposite of the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup scenario.
Yeah. It's like if you are a YouTuber and you have 50 subscribers and your friend with the same 50 subscribers decide to do a collaboration. It's all the same friggin' people, man.
The crossover I've been waiting for.
Yeah, they're not gonna. That's not the solution.
I've gotten like offers some like weird like other million sub channels, and they'll be like, my market is entirely drama related or entirely everyone under 10. Like
right.
This isn't the market I'm looking to poach right now. Like,
no.
Are you after my 30-year-old angry men who read comics market? I don't understand where the crossover is here.
Yeah.
It's clearly a popular market.
Yeah, popular enough that New York Times spoiled it without hesitation and without going like, what? Have you seen the news? There's enough interesting things happening. I'm not going to ruin a Batman book.
I wonder if when they got that news, they were like, Batman news? Go double check to make sure Trump didn't say something stupid.
Right.
Yeah,
he didn't?
really.
All right, put the Batman thing out.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
the last 12 hours. Let's run with this.
Right? I mean, I would not be surprised if it was just like, it's the lowest thing on the totem pole. Anything comes in that's more interesting. You know, if Grumpy Cat dies, this article is next.
Could you imagine that? We were going to spoil Batman, but Grumpy Cat died.
But Grumpy Cat died.
Put that out in the universe, Sal. That could happen now in the next little bit.
I know, it's been very... He's got Down syndrome or something. It's very sad.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Why would you make a joke if that's actually a thing, Sal?
A cat has Down syndrome.
Cats don't normally look like that. He has a weird problem.
Oh. Well, now I feel bad for taking joy in it for so long.
He's fine.
Now I feel sad. What have you done?
He
Don't
has a
feel
movie.
sad.
He crossed over with Garfield. Grumpy Cat's fine.
He was
Not
voiced
just
by Aubrey
that.
Plaza.
If you didn't take joy in it, they wouldn't have the funds to take care of Grumpy Cat.
Grumpy Cat probably has a litany of medical bills. Like, trust me, he's fine. Like, you should continue to buy Grumpy Cat merchandise. I'm not attacking Grumpy Cat. I'm just making a
I'm
point.
sad.
Anyway, are we done?
So, I guess that should be a good spot to end
I'm
the
sorry.
episode.
Yeah. Besides,
Sal making everyone sad. Spoilers.
I'm
Grumpy
not saying
Cat's
he's
a
gonna
cat
die.
that's gonna die.
Yeah.
I mean, all cats are gonna die, just like all of us.
Yeah.
Oh.
This is worse than Rob saying that Stan Lee's gonna die.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, it's a statement of fact, unless you truly believe that Stan Lee's going to live
Okay,
forever.
but there's one thing
And
to say.
two-
Stan Lee's 95, guys. It's getting close, and it's another thing to go. He's almost done with his living.
Yeah.
No, okay, fine. If that's how you're going to be, then you be that way. There's no winning that argument.
Besides, guys, in 5 hours, at least on our coast, they will have our midnight release of Batman 50. So
Yes, now that said, I'm going to a comic book store
We're
in the
gonna
next
go.
5 hours, and I'm going to pick up my copy of Batman 50.
yeah.
And I doubt GameStop or Walmart or anyone would do that, so that's kind of
True.
fun.
Walmart's open at midnight. If you go out there and you get the not as grumpy guy,
Yeah.
they'll normally give you the midnight release of a video game.
Oh, that's cool.
I love that.
Or they won't know that that this isn't even a thing. Like,
Right.
why do you want me to go in the back and get a video game?
Just go
I
get
don't
it.
want to say what.
My favorite is the little old lady. Hey, can I have the new Call of Duty? I'll check the back. Here you go. Sweet.
Sweet.
Wow.
So I guess that's a good spot to end our episode today. I hope
Yes,
you
it is.
guys enjoyed the discussion. It went a lot of interesting places. Came back to Batman at some point. Overall, without spoiling it, I am going to say the ending did not surprise me because I'm the only one who actually knows it at this point. I'm interested to see what's next. So
Yeah.
Yeah, if
but I'm also the individual that goes, hey, if I don't like a run, I'll just stop reading it till the new writer gets on.
Exactly.
Like,
You
Yeah,
have to
unless you're
wait
Marvel.
50 new issues because he says he's going to write it to at least issue 100.
yeah,
He's
just go to
serious.
100.
Yeah, well, if Marvel has a book that doesn't sell, they don't get a new writer on it. They just cancel it.
they just cancel the book. That's the end of that.
Because why? in the hell would you do that?
Right?
Oh, this could do well. The writer is the problem right now. Nah.
The whole book is the bad problem.
That's
The
the
whole
character.
the whole idea. Let's just cancel it. It's
Yep.
like, okay, well, you know what, Marvel, if you did that, then like nobody but the Fantastic Four would exist. So
Even then, the Fantastic Four wouldn't exist. Like they weren't selling great either. You know.
yeah, they
Anyway,
were selling.
guys,
Yeah,
we're going to wrap up
that's
this
true.
episode of the Weekly Poll. We'll be back. Follow the Twitter. We'll decide after this if we're going to do an Ant-Man spoiler cast next week. I don't know. We actually haven't discussed it at all.
No.
But if we don't do it, we'll be back in 2 weeks talking about probably the spoiler, because at that point, you can't blame us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And otherwise, you may find us next week. You can follow us here on Twitch at twitch.tv/eligiblemonster. The schedule is normally posted when we're live, so you'll find out very quickly if we're doing something. Or you can follow the Twitter, The Weekly Poll. If you want to get more Sal, go check out Sal and Tiffany over at Comic Pop. Joel is at Caped Joel, where he reviews all of your comic books. You get Rob over at Comics Explained, giving you all of that sexy chocolate smoothness of the milk
Sexy chocolate
Rob.
smoothness.
It's on your
Wow.
business card, isn't it?
It's like
yeah, it says sexy chocolate smoothness.
His business card is a chocolate
That's what
bar.
it
I was
It
thinking,
is.
like,
Oh, that'd be the best
chocolate,
business card.
And then it just
Yeah.
kind of went with like sexual chocolate smoothness, and it just became a thing.
Wow.
So anyway,
No, that would be a terrible business card because people would eat it. They'd be like, "Hey, I forgot your number.
You put it
I
on the
accidentally
wrapper.
ate
Keep
your
the
Put it on the
business
inside of the wrapper.
card." Okay, yeah, put it on the inside of the wrapper. There we go. Like here's a chocolate bar.
healing. What was the wrestler that did that song?
Mark
Anthony.
Mark Henry was sexual
Mark
chocolate.
Henry.
For
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, you can find me over at Comicstorian. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. And as for the Twitch channel, we will be live again on Thursday with some R&BE goodness. See you later.
Bye.
Alan